afternoon, everybody. Vasuvada Party here. This is the conversation with my guest, Matt Maiocco, longtime 49ers beat writer for the Santa Rosa Press-Democrat, currently the last 11 years, NBC Sports Bay Area, NBCSportsBayArea.com, has a podcast with Laura Britt, who does a great job, called 49ers Talk. You can get that podcast anywhere you subscribe to your podcast, just like you can get our podcast anywhere you subscribe to your podcast. It's a podcasting world, Matt. Thanks to everybody on Facebook Live and YouTube Live for joining us right now. And then if you missed any of it, obviously you can download and subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. We appreciate it. Wealth of knowledge coming 3 weeks away from training camp. Matt, how are you? Thank you for the time.
Well, Vasu, thanks for having me. Everything's going well. Just a little bit of downtime here before the grind begins in late July. And then it's just hit the ground running and just keep spreading until the finish.
Yeah, let me ask you this for just a quick second here, because we went through such a tough time as a world and as a universe last year, 2020. I talked to a few coach friends of mine, and they have plans in place and they have everything detailed. Last year threw probably coaches off more than anything because they didn't have a plan and they didn't know what to do. How has it been for you, not only for your job, but as far as getting through 2020, because it's such a big thing going through? I mean, more important than anything that we're doing right now.
Yeah, I mean, for me, as far as the work aspect of it, the only thing that really changed was the process. I still did all the things I normally do, but, I did it a lot over Zoom and, kind of interaction like this, like we're having right now. From a personal standpoint, I was able to, obviously spend a lot of time with family, getting ready to send one daughter to college. And so we had some really good family time. Everybody handled it differently, but, I think that, we did a pretty good job of just kind of taking it one day at a time and living in the moment and not stressing over things you can't control. And so, it'll be interesting to see just how close to normal, whatever normal means, we get to this year. I still don't know that I'll be in an NFL locker room this season. I think I'll be traveling. Last year was the first year that I, didn't go to one road game. I even, for the road games, I would go to Levi Stadium and we'd do our work there, some of the TV stuff, and I do my podcast from there as well. But yeah, I think everybody's just kind of waiting to see, where we're going to be as far as just the process of gathering information and everything else. So hopefully things return at least somewhat closer to normal than it was last year.
Well, I feel like we're getting back to a little bit, and hopefully everything does go well and you're able to get back to the normalcy, I guess, whatever it was before 2020. And glad you're well and glad your family's well as well too. All right, let's get to it. 3 weeks till training camp. I'm going to start with the quarterback situation, because obviously the quarterback situation for a month in April before the draft, apparently John Lynch wanted to be in the news for a month, every day on radio, every day on TV. This was the number one story, even though the Giants were playing well, the Warriors were playing for a playoff spot, the A's were in first place. I mean, you couldn't find any news on anything outside of the 49ers and what they're going to do with number two. And they made that trade a month before. Usually trades happen like probably a week before or at the draft or something like that. I mean, you know better than I. But to have this happen a month before, I mean, did he want to be in the news and have to be asked every day? I mean, what was going on there?
Well, I think that they had an opportunity and they felt like this was something they wanted to do and needed to do for the long-term health of the organization. So, instead of waiting and having something fall through, I think they paid a stiff price, and they did what it took to move up to number 3 to get, one of their guys. When they made that deal with Miami, I don't think they knew right then and there who they were going to take. But I think they'd seen enough of Mac Jones and Trey Lance to know that, one of those two guys would be worth it. Or, you hear Kyle Shanahan talk today, and he feels like all those quarterbacks, and maybe even throw Justin Fields in there, would have been somebody that they could have taken at number 3. And then it was just a matter of figuring out which one was the guy they wanted. But, they didn't want to put themselves in a position where, if you trade up to 6 or wherever, that a team might leapfrog them. I think at that point, everybody knew that Trevor Lawrence was going to go number 1, Zach Wilson was going to go number 2. And so rather than, just kind of staying pat at number 12 and seeing who fell to them. They wanted to be able to dictate who their next quarterback would be. Who's the third quarterback taken. That was going to be the guy that the 49ers wanted. They wanted to be able to go out and get their guy. So I think that was the reason they did it. And yes, I mean, they paid a stiff price. I mean, 2 future first round picks, third rounder in 2022. But I think, ultimately they picked the guy that I think made the most sense. We could discuss all 3 of those guys and give you good reasons why each one of those 3 would be the pick. But I think when you combine the pocket presence, the ability to make plays with his arm, which is the number one thing, and then you throw in Trey Lance's ability to also run, that's something that Kyle Shanahan has not had since Robert Griffin. And he kind of put together that playbook on the fly in Washington, and Robert Griffin had an outstanding rookie season.
Right.
So I don't know that Trey Lance will have that opportunity, because Jimmy Garoppolo, to me, kind of still looks like he's going to be the starter to open this year.
Let me take it a step further with Garoppolo here, because obviously he's the incoming quarterback. He took him to a Super Bowl a couple years ago. I know the injuries have kind of held him back. Is it because of the understanding or the fact that he gets injured is the reason that they were looking for the future, or is this totally just a future pick and they were just preparing for the next generation of 49ers football?
Yeah, I think they wanted stability at that quarterback position. And, there are most of the knocks on Jimmy is just his availability. I mean, he's basically missed half of his scheduled starts since he took over as the 49ers starting quarterback at the end of the 2017 season. So, when you think about, 2017, he finished with 5 starts. They won all 5. 2018, he got injured third game of the year. That season went down the drain.
Yeah.
2019, he's healthy. They go to the Super Bowl. Should have won the Super Bowl probably.
Right.
And then 2020, he gets injured again. And the season goes down the drain. So I think this was about, we can poke holes in Jimmy's game, but I think
actually I can't, Matt. That's the whole point I'm trying to make. I can't.
Yeah, I think
what does the guy have to do to earn the respect? Because all he did was, he missed one throw, but who makes that throw in the Super Bowl? And then the defense faltered in the fourth quarter, so that's not on him either in the Super Bowl. And I just don't understand. I've talked to quarterback coaches and people that have established it, and go ahead with your story, but I'm just curious.
I do think that there's some aspects of his game, like anticipation, where he could be better. Some of the accuracy, he could be better. I mean, he's not perfect, right? I mean, he's still not even when he's healthy, he's not a top 10 quarterback, right, but he's a good quarterback. And so to your point, yes, I mean, they have a heck of a lot better chance of winning football games with him on the field than him on the sideline. And especially true the last 3 seasons where, the backups were Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard. So I think what the 49ers did was, hey, let's get somebody who can be kind of the cornerstone of this franchise for a long time. And hopefully, from their standpoint, somebody who can remain on the field. And it's always a tough one because, okay, how much of those injuries are just bad luck? How much of it is he's predisposed to injuries? And it's an impossible question to answer, but it's almost like, okay, well, we've already been through this twice. We got to cover our butts in case there's a third time. And so this quarterback situation is going to be absolutely fascinating because of just how it's set up. There's no question Trey Lance is the future, but Jimmy Garoppolo, if he takes care of business, he's the now. And if he plays well, 49ers win games. If they go as far as the organization believes they can go, then it's a great problem to have, right? Right. What do you do with the quarterback who just led you to the Super Bowl? It's a great problem to have because it means obviously the 49ers will have gone to the Super Bowl again. So it just, I don't know how it's going to play out. I don't think the organization has any idea how it's going to play out. It's just kind of like, okay, let's let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's just take it. And then, when Lance is ready to take over as a starter, he takes over. If Jimmy continues to play well, then maybe his trade value is increased in the offseason. Jed York told me 2 months ago that they have talked about it, and there are worse case scenarios than Jimmy Garoppolo playing a really good football for 2 years, and he remains a starter for 2 years.
Right.
That I don't know if that, I guess there are worse situations, because that will have told you then that he's played well, and they probably won a lot of football games, and they've gone about as far as they can go. So I think it's just one of these things where, it's partly based on how well Trey Lance is adapting, how he gets it, and also how well Jimmy Garoppolo is performing and how the team is faring. And also, of course, obviously, if Garoppolo is able to remain healthy for the next season or two.
It'll be interesting to see, no doubt about it. All right, one more on the quarterback situation here. How serious? First of all, what do you think Kyle Shanahan thought of Zach Wilson? I really like Zach Wilson, and I thought maybe that there was a chance that he could fall to 3 because everybody was talking about Trey Lance. And then from a trade aspect, how serious was this Kirk Cousins or Matthew Stafford or anybody else of all the names that were mentioned during the offseason as far as a trade partner because of the Garoppolo situation with the injury?
Well, and you forgot to mention Aaron Rodgers, too.
Aaron Rodgers, too, yes.
Yeah, of course. Hey, the 49ers, they kicked tires on a lot of different guys. And, I do believe that if Zach Wilson were there at number 3, the 49ers would have gladly taken him. I don't think that, I think they talked to the Jets kind of in passing about moving up to 2, and the Jets simply weren't interested in that, because that would have meant that the Jets would have had to go back to 12. At least initially. Maybe the 49ers could have moved up to 3 and then to 2, but I think the Jets were set on Zach Wilson. But hey, at the end of the last season, or when Garoppolo had his second high ankle sprain and didn't return to action, my immediate knee-jerk reaction was that the 49ers would move on from him. And as it turned out, obviously they didn't move on from him, at least they haven't yet. But it's pretty clear the 49ers were prepared to move on from him. There was talk of Andy Dalton. There was talk, as you mentioned, of Matthew Stafford. And Kyle Shanahan did 2 weeks of work on Matthew Stafford and came away from those 2 weeks really liking Stafford. And he was very bummed when it was the Rams who got him. And then, they did make a phone call. Kyle picked up the phone and called Matt LaFleur over with the Packers just to see if there was any possibility that Aaron Rodgers was available. So they did all their homework. They looked into every avenue as far as who might be available. I don't know how far it would have gotten with Kirk Cousins, but we all know what Kyle Shanahan thinks of Kirk Cousins. The interesting thing, I guess, other than Aaron Rodgers, who's, Aaron's not a runner, but he's certainly athletic and can make plays with his legs too. All those guys kind of fit that Kyle Shanahan mold of pocket passer, anticipation, being able to drive the ball down the field, use play action, all those things that he values in a quarterback. But ultimately, I think the 49ers feel like that they're getting that with Trey Lance. And the fact that, Trey's young. Trey just turned 21 years old.
Now.
And he hasn't, we can talk about his lack of experience. His number of starts is, the same as those other guys who are in this draft, but he hasn't played football in a year and a half. He played 1 game in the fall of 2020. So I think the 49ers, when they're bringing him in and they saw him in the offseason program, I think they like the idea that, he's kind of like this, ball of clay that they can kind of mold into what they want him to be, and they can take their time with it. They don't have to rush him out there. It's not like a Trevor Lawrence situation where he's going to be the starter for the Jaguars. It's not like, a New York Jets situation where there is no backup, to Zach Wilson. You look at the quarterbacks they have on the roster, and none of those guys can start. So the 49ers are in a situation with a ready-made team. They are set up to win. They have a good roster, pretty solid at every position. Some issues with depth, I think, but who doesn't have issues with depth? So I think the 49ers are in a spot where they can really just play this thing out and groom Trey Lance the right way.
Maybe I didn't say Aaron Rodgers because I'm a Chicago Bears fan, and every time I mention his name, it's 7-0 Green Bay already. Every time I talk to him, that I want to know how fast Justin Fields is going to start for Andy Dalton this year because I'm not big on that. All right, so if they're ready made to win, Robert Saleh's gone as the defensive coordinator, and he's with the Jets obviously now, and he wanted to have Zach Wilson in the organization. I think he's going to have a lot more problems with the Jets. I think their infrastructure is still very bad, and I know they got rid of Sam Darnold, and I think he's going to have a good year in Carolina, but that's neither here nor there as far as the 49ers go. So what happens if Garoppolo gets injured or gets off to a bad start, and this is a ready-made to win team, and Trey Lance is still learning the system? What kind of situation is that going to be, and how's that going to be for them?
That's a great question. And I mean, we look at the Packers last year. The Packers, they took Jordan Love, number 15 overall. Now, obviously, there's a big difference between number 15 overall and number 3 overall. Right. But Jordan Love never suited up for a game last season. He was the number 3 quarterback from the start of the year until the end of the year. Never put on a uniform for the Packers on game day. So the 49ers will be in a situation where, starting in July here, when training camp gets going, they have to make a decision on how much are they going to develop Trey Lance, how much are they going to, kind of push him to kind of accelerate his learning curve. But also, they also have to kind of at the same time figure out, is he at a spot where he can take over if something were to happen to Garoppolo? And so if they're feeling like, boy, we can do a couple packages with him, but he's just not ready to be a starter and play every snap in a game, then they're going to have to try to get Nate Sudfeld or Josh Rosen up to speed as kind of insurance policies in case something happens with Garoppolo. So that will be one of the more interesting parts of this training camp, is how they're going to divvy up the reps. You want to get Garoppolo a lot of reps, obviously, because he didn't play much last season. Right. And he's coming off a pretty good offseason program. But you're also going to want to do a lot with Trey Lance, while at the same time kind of keeping that door open, kind of hedging your bets in case one of those other guys is just ready to win football games. And ultimately, that's the thing that Kyle Shanahan has to do. It's not about, hey, let's build for the 2024 season.
Yeah.
It's not, hey, what are we going to do? I mean, they have to do this balancing act of doing what's right by Trey Lance to get him ready to play. But more importantly, to everybody in that locker room, they need to put the quarterback out there that gives them the best chance of winning now. Because there's a lot of older guys on that team, and there's a lot of guys on one-year contracts that they have to kind of seize this opportunity with a roster that's ready to win now.
Well, we'll have a whole training camp to determine what the situation with the quarterback, and of course, Josh Rosen is still there. Hopefully, Trey Lance develops for 49ers fans, because we know how 49ers fans are in this area. When they're rolling, they're the best story in town, no doubt about it. All right, let's talk about the team a little bit defensively. Robert Saleh, we mentioned, left to the Jets. How's the continuity from Robert Saleh to the new defensive coordinator, Nick Bosa, coming off an injury, and then Fred Warner, maybe the best middle linebacker, best linebacker overall in the NFL right now? Obviously, the voting in the Pro Bowl came to show that last year. So where are the concerns? I would say the secondary of the concerns. There's no Akilla Witherspoon. K'Wan Williams, you don't know what you're going to get on certain games as far as a slot cornerback, and that's become a big position in the NFL now, slot cornerback has. So where are they defensively, and where is Nick Bosa? Because I think he's the key if he comes back injury-wise.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I think with DeMeco Ryans taking over as defensive coordinator, they're going to keep a lot of continuity. I think they're going to be more aggressive, especially up front. I think they can do some more stuff with their coverages. Losing Witherspoon, I don't think is a big deal. Now, he might go play some good football in Seattle, but the 49ers were just ready to move on from him because you really don't know what you're getting from him on a day-to-day basis. Richard Sherman remains out there. I don't think he'll be back because right now I think they feel good about Emmanuel Mosley. They feel good about Jason Barrett, and then the rookie Ambry Thomas, who they took in the third round from Michigan. Bosa is absolutely the key. Not only that, he's looked good in the videos I've seen him post. He was going to come in for the offseason program for the mini camp. He wasn't going to practice, but he was going to come in and they're just going to check him out and he would do, individual drills and such. But to me, that's probably maybe more of a concern than the secondary is the outside pass rush. You got Nick Bosa on one side, outstanding, obviously. He has to stay healthy. And remember now, that was the one thing when the 49ers drafted him, leading up to that 2019 draft, was there weren't very many questions about Nick Bosa. One of them, though, was the health. He was always injured. He tore ACL in high school. He had the core muscle injury that wiped out his final season at Ohio State. They did get Samson Ebukam from the Rams, but he's a 4.5 sack guy, the past 2 seasons with the Rams. So they're kind of taking a leap of faith that he can be this guy who can take his game to the next level. And with defensive line coach Chris Kocurek, I think he's capable of doing that. Another wild card is Dee Ford. They would like to have him healthy. They would like to have him playing at the level that he played at with the Kansas City Chiefs. But he's coming off a back injury that was very significant. I don't know the details of it, but anytime there's a back injury, it's significant. He didn't practice this offseason. He was continuing to rehab. The 49ers, I think, are cautiously optimistic that he can get himself into football playing shape, form. But then the question becomes, is he able to play effectively? And if so, for how long? So when I look at the 49ers defense, to me, the major issue is the pass rush and what they're going to do to put pressure on the quarterback and take the heat off of the secondary. Because, hey, the best secondary in the world can't sit back there and cover guys when the guys up front aren't putting pressure on the quarterback. So that, to me, that's the major issue that the 49ers defense faces. Maybe the major issue that the 49ers as a team face this coming season.
Our guest, Matt Maiocco, NBC Sports Bay Area from 2010 to the present, co-host of the 49ers Talk with Laura Britt, wherever you get your podcast. Thanks to everybody on Facebook Live and YouTube Live for joining in right now as well. You can download it if you missed any of this. Good information from Matt Maiocco. Anytime I get a question out to anybody that is more of an expert than me, I feel good that I asked a good question. So I appreciate that, Matt, right there. Let's go on to Kyle Shanahan here just a little bit because there's a lot of talk. I get half the fan base that likes him and half the fan base that's kind of still not sold out on him because.
You think so? You think it's
well?
I think it's pretty,
maybe I only talk to
universal. I think
maybe I only talk to 2 people, Matt. Maybe I only talk to 2 people. Okay, so who knows? Maybe it's just you and I. I don't know. I like him. I think he's done a great job with what he's had coming in. The Garoppolo signing, obviously he was a quarterback at the time going into it. Now this situation here, I think there's some people that still question his game management. I don't. I think he's a terrific coach. I think he comes from a coaching lineage. But from the perception of what people say and what the observations are from you and everybody that sees the 49ers every day, the window of winning, you talked about this is a ready-made team to win. And he's got this contract. He's tied with John Lynch for a few more years, I believe. What about Kyle Shanahan and how he looks into this team from a standpoint of winning and how everybody's concerned about their future, but you got to think that this is probably something that's related to winning for him right now.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with Kyle is even in like 2017, 2018, those teams weren't good. They lost a lot more than they won. But I felt like they did all the right thing. I mean, they didn't make all the right personnel moves, obviously.
Right.
No team is going to do that. But just establishing kind of the foundation of what they wanted to do as an organization and the way he handled the locker room, I just thought he was darn near perfect as far as just the touch he had as a head coach. And then, of course, 2019 comes, and then, as you mentioned, they give Shanahan and Lynch contract extensions. And then last year happens.
Right.
Fact of the matter is, as positive of a feeling as I have of Kyle Shanahan as a head coach, let's face the facts. 3 of their 4 seasons have been losing seasons.
Right.
And we can say, we can make all kinds of excuses, or I'd say this, we can assign all kinds of reasons why they lost. Year 1, there's just a bad team that they had to kind of remake that roster. Year 2 was the injury to the quarterback. Year 3 they won. Then last year injuries across the board. So that's part of it, obviously. But I don't think anybody's on the hot seat. Usually when people are on the hot seat, it's for reasons other than just the win and loss total. You can kind of sense that the organization is floundering, or just, they don't have the right vision, or whatever the case may be. And I don't see that happening here, because everybody's.
I don't either.
Yeah, everybody seems to be pulling in the same direction. I mean, Vasu, in the past, when he was struggling.
I lived here for 35 years. I know the difference.
Yeah, we're talking major dysfunction. You could talk to two high-ranking people in the organization.
No doubt.
One of them's, ripping on the guy over there, and then you go over to that guy, and he's ripping on the guy over here. And so I haven't gotten any sense at all that these two guys, Lynch and Shanahan, are pulling in anything but the same direction. And so, at that point, it's just kind of a matter of sticking with the plan. Seasons like 2020 are going to happen. Yeah. Maybe not to that extreme. I mean, that's once in a century pandemic.
Knock on wood, Matt, please.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about all the things that kind of conspired against the 49ers with all the injuries, not just the injuries. It's the injuries to key individuals. Like their best players were injured. And then, of course, they're kicked out of their home. They end up playing home games in Arizona. Right. So there just wasn't a whole lot, I don't think, that you could really look at 2020 and say, oh, that's the way it is, or that's the way it's going to be, except for one more year of Jimmy Garoppolo being injured. And that was the thing that the 49ers, the conclusion they drew was, we need to insulate ourselves better in the event that something happens to Garoppolo again.
No doubt about it. All right, a couple more minutes here with our guest, Matt Maiocco. Let's just kind of capsulize the NFC West a little bit. Obviously, Matthew Stafford, who I love, I'm actually glad to see him out of the NFC North, because even though the Lions are so bad, he's just, to me, he's just got all the tools of a great quarterback. And I think being in LA, he's got a running game. They've got a pretty good defense. And I don't know if they're favored to win the division or not, because I think the 49ers defense is still better. Arizona, I'm still not sold on Arizona. I'm sold on Kyler Murray a little bit, but I just don't think you can have – tight end is the most important position in the NFL. And they don't have a tight end, and they don't have a decent running game. I know they've got the kid from Miami, Kenyon Drake, but not a kid anymore, but he's not really the type of running back that you would want 1,000 yards from. And then Seattle, their defense was just horrible last year, and Russell Wilson had to do everything. DK Metcalf's a stud offensively. They're really good, but how good is Seattle, and where do the 49ers fit amongst these three teams, Matt?
Well, I mean, I really think that each one of these teams and the fan base of each one of these teams can head into this season with Super Bowl aspirations, and legitimate. The two teams,
You're talking about the Rams? You're talking about the Rams and the Niners?
I'm talking the Rams. I'm talking the Niners. I'm talking Arizona. I'm talking Seattle. I think Seattle.
You think Arizona has Super Bowl chances? Really?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I'm talking about more to the point. I think their organization feels like they do, and I think their fan base feels like they can. Okay. I mean, they were a 500 team last year. That's getting better. That's a young team. Their defense flies around. They made. They brought in. They bring in AJ Green and JJ Watt.
Right.
So you don't make those moves unless you feel like they can help take you to that next level. I mean, they didn't make those moves with 9-7 in mind. And with Seattle, as long as they have Russell Wilson, and by the sounds of it, I mean, this could be the last year he's there. We'll see. But anytime you have Russell Wilson, you have a puncher's chance of winning. So I think it's a highly competitive division. And I think it's the only division in the NFL, maybe the only division in the NFL for a long, long time, where each of those teams in the division enters with legitimate, deep run playoff hopes. So I just think every time, it's a 17-game schedule this season.
Right.
The six, each team will play 6 division games. Mm-hmm. The team that can manage an above 500 record within the division is set up very nicely, you know, and it's not going to be easy to go 4-2 in that division.
No.
And the Rams, you know, getting Stafford, that pushes them up as long as he can, you know, adapt and learn that offense. But I mean, I just think it's going to be, I mean, if I'm home, you know, whatever, bye week or whatever, if 49ers have a Monday game, if there's an NFC West versus NFC West game going anywhere on my dial, I'm tuning in because those are going to be some really good football games.
Yeah, no, maybe I misspoke here on that. I think the division is the best division. I think, but everybody's going to beat up everybody, and I think maybe that's why I think Arizona might be lacking in that sense because of the physicality and the nature of the division. That Seattle may make a comeback, and the Rams obviously have a good defense. Losing Johnny Johnson hurts there, and then of course the 49ers in a win situation. But I just not sold on Arizona. I want to see a little bit more about Arizona.
And I'm with you on that one too, because I'm one of these guys that's always like, oh, watch out for Arizona. And they always let you down, right? And so it's like, okay, well, at some point you go, okay, you know, Arizona. But I do think that they have a chance to get over the hump this season. And you make a good point with teams within the division beating themselves up. I mean, teams in other divisions might be able to, you know, run the table in their division, or at least pick up, you know, 2 or 4 easy wins against, you know, 2 of the other opponents. And that ultimately could hurt the NFC West because it's less likely that an NFC West team is going to be a number 1 seed in the NFC, which means the road to get to Los Angeles for the Super Bowl is going to be more difficult for an NFC West team than maybe a team from another division.
No doubt. All right, a couple more minutes here with Matt Maiocco. Just because I do the other show, I wanted to throw this up there because everybody thinks the 49ers are going to win, have a good chance to win. Second best team in the NFC at plus 650 and plus 1,400 to win the Super Bowl for the 49ers. This is all pending on which our earlier conversation with Jimmy Garoppolo said and Trey Lance possibly having to come in, or if they have to go to Josh Rosen or anything like that. What do you think about what the odds makers think? Because you know what? Shockingly, odds makers are actually pretty close to the real truth.
Yeah, I mean, does the line, do the 49ers get a little bump because of proximity to Vegas? You know, does more 49er money
These are the opening lines. This has nothing to do with the money yet.
Yeah, okay. So, and who's the favorite out of the NFC?
Tampa Bay, plus 325.
Okay.
And I think, San Francisco's second in the NFC, and they're 4th overall. Kansas City is 2nd or 3rd. And then I think they had Baltimore in there as 3rd. I'll have to look at it again. I'll text that to you.
Yeah, I guess I would be a little bit surprised. I mean, I would think that maybe the Rams would be a slight favorite over the 49ers. But no, I think that's about right. I mean, I do think that if the 49ers can stay healthy, I mean, their one fatal flaw could be the pass rush. You know, that could be their one fatal flaw. But you know, they got a good team. You know,
they do.
They got a good
team. Come together.
I would have said the same thing last year though, and then we know what happened last year. But yeah, I mean, I think I could definitely make a case where the 49ers are the, you know, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th team as far as, you know, legitimate favorites to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl.
I laugh with Papa all the time because he's not a gambler, and you and I have talked. I do like the wager, and I do the show on the Stables Media here for Make the Money and Run, which, by the way, is going to be on at 10 o'clock here on Facebook and YouTube. So you guys are doing it. I joke because now he has to talk about it because NBC and Bally Sports and all these regional networks are all talking about how much have you seen, you know, just because we talked about it before off the air, but how much do you think fantasy football and the wagering aspect of gambling has kind of affected the NFL in terms of viewership and in terms of how much more popular it is than it was maybe when you started covering, because it was still big then too.
Yeah, no, I there's no question, right? I mean, you have people who maybe, you know, don't follow football or aren't big fans of football, but they're in an office pool, and so they follow it. They certainly are scanning to see who's scoring touchdowns, who's racking up yards. So yeah, it definitely,
injury lists are being printed out of work computers all the time.
Absolutely, yeah. Who do you start this week? This guy's iffy with a hamstring pull.
Right.
Yeah, there's.
Do you get a lot of emails from people about stuff like that? I'm just curious because I would imagine beat writers do.
I do. Usually it's like people that I know.
Okay.
So it's usually like, my wife's coworker or something who will send me a text and say, hey, or a friend who never speaks to me about the 49ers. I have one friend who will pretty regularly will shoot me a text, you name the, Raheem Mostert. Is he going to play this week?
Right.
And I'll, I can give you an educated guess. But yeah, no, it is definitely those two elements that you talk about have definitely increased the popularity of the sport. No question.
You'll get my record at the end of the year, so we'll see how I do. Especially if Justin Fields is going to start for the Bears at some point this year.
By the way,
I'm not sold on Andy Dalton at all, but
I have a friend who's in a fantasy pool or fantasy league,
mm-hmm.
and their thing is whoever finishes last
mm-hmm.
for the next year's draft has to conduct the draft while sitting on a block of ice. And then I don't know if you saw the guy. I think he was in Atlanta. Where he had to spend 24 hours in a Waffle House.
Right.
And for every waffle he ate, that eliminated 1 hour off of the 24 hours. So there's some those are fun.
Those are a little extreme. All right, a couple more things here with Matt Maiocco. I just wanted to talk about Alex Smith because he's somebody that I know in Los Gatos. I used to run into him all the time. I think he got an unfair shot with the Niners with 6 coordinators in 7 years. He did great in Kansas City, but he's always been a team guy. And I heard a 60 Minutes interview with him, and obviously the E60 that happened during the summer with the injury the last couple of years and all that. But he's always been a team guy. And the CBS reporter asked him, he said, "Oh, you're helping Kaepernick and you're helping Patrick Mahomes basically take your job." And he goes, "I've always been a team guy, and that's who I am." He's a quality guy, and what he did in Washington should not be understated. And I know you've dealt with him a lot. And I really think the comeback, now that they're naming awards after people, I think the Comeback Player of the Year award should be named after Alex Smith.
I mean, who else, right?
Yeah.
He's done everything the right way. And he's one of those guys where, kind of going back to what I said about a head coach and a general manager, as long as they're on the same page and there's not an off the field reason, whether it's losing control of the locker room or whatever, or dysfunction between, there's usually another reason that coaches
6 coordinators in 7 years. That'll do it too.
Exactly. And so with Alex, Alex struggled, right? I mean, he did not have, had a lot of kind of poor seasons and with the 49ers, and as the number 1 overall pick, generally a guy who has that kind of money invested in him doesn't stick around much longer.
Right.
But the fact that the organization wanted him to stay, Jim Harbaugh came in 2011 and said, "You get your fresh start here." That doesn't happen, unless you're a great person and you're a team first guy. Mm-hmm. So, finally, I think after 7 or 8 years, he started to get the due that he deserved, and the accolades that he deserves. And I think when he ended up leaving the 49ers, I think people would look back and say he was a good 49er. And I'm sure people in Kansas City, have a high opinion of him. People in Washington have a high opinion of him. And so, it was great that he was able to leave the game, mostly under his own terms, that he was able to. Is
he officially retired? Did he announce his retirement?
He announced his retirement.
Did. Okay. Because I had heard his college coach was Urban Meyer, and I had heard that he was thinking of bringing him in to kind of do the same thing he did with Kaepernick and Alex Smith for Trevor Lawrence, which I thought would have been a great idea, and he wouldn't have to jeopardize himself being on the field. But he's so darn competitive. He wants to play. If he's out there, he wants to play, and I don't know if he could survive another injury, not necessarily to that extent, but where it is. But quality guy, I love running into him. I mean, I know him a little bit. I don't know him like you do, but I do see him around the neighborhood with the kids and his wife in Los Gatos when they were here, and I hope I run into him again.
And they're moving back to the Bay Area too.
And they're moving back to the Bay Area. All right, last thing here for Matt. Just because I'm a big UCLA guy growing up in Southern California, Terry Donahue passed away over the weekend from cancer at 77. He was here with the 49er. Not a great run, as you talked about, some of the dysfunction runs, the GM, director of player personnel. I'll tell you two quick stories here. One, I was a kid in Southern California playing baseball. I always wanted to go to UCLA. I never got to get to UCLA. San Jose State, fine. I'm not knocking San Jose State here. They did well by me, believe me, including the baseball days too. But would have been nice to go down to UCLA. Anytime I had friends from the Bay Area that went to school there, I always made a visit down there. And he was the guy during my era of, you and I are about the same age, of my era, your era of coaching UCLA football, and he is UCLA football. But what were your interactions with him? As he was a nice guy. The funny thing is, and the second thing, real quick before I let you talk about him a little bit, is every Friday or every Saturday I would see him in Los Gatos when I lived in Los Gatos for about 8 years. Little place called Dean and Darren, Double D's Restaurant Sports Grill. They had all the games on Saturday and Sunday, and he would be there, I guess, as director of player personnel. He loved college football so much. I don't know sometimes if he was there just to watch or actually do player personnel evaluations as the GM.
That is so funny because there was he didn't travel much, to watch games unless it was, in California. But there was one time I went down to Double D's, right?
Yeah.
Met him.
I'm inviting you down there again, Matt. It's a great place.
Okay. But yeah, that's what he would do. He would watch games on TV. He was such a successful football coach at UCLA. I think maybe when he had more energy and passion, he could have had more success in the NFL, but I think he came to the 49ers when he was, ready to kind of dial it back a little bit. So yeah, I mean, I always had good interactions with Terry. Those were some kind of weird times, with Terry and Steve Mariucci and Bill Walsh was on his way out. And so, it's sad that he passed away over the weekend, age of 77. And, I know he had 3 daughters, wife of 52 years, I think Andrea and he were married for 52 years. So certainly my thoughts go out to his family because he was a good family man and his family certainly did love him.
No doubt about it. And I had a friend who passed away a few weeks ago, played for him in the late 80s, early 90s. And so I know that he loves football, and I know he loved Coach Donahue, so they're probably having a blast right now. All right, Matt, I can't appreciate it enough. I can't thank you enough and appreciate you for coming on. You can catch Matt Maiocco, NBC Sports Bay Area, pre and post for the 49ers, all sorts of things during the week, especially when training camp season. You probably have a hit every day during training camp, don't you?
At least one. Yeah. So, Vasu, I'm looking forward to continuing our talks in the press box, something that was lacking last season. So we'll be
hopefully
able to.
I'll get back to the NFL this year as well too, and I'll look forward to it. But we have each other's numbers now. Now we can meet up in Walnut Creek. I love Walnut Creek. I know you got some favorite places over there. All right, absolutely. You can catch them on 49ers Talk with Laura Britt. Conversation with Matt Maiocco. I'm Vasu Vadaparty. Thanks to everybody on Facebook and YouTube Live. Thanks again, Matt. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great.